Oh, good. You guys are here to talk about fantasy football because you're stressed? You want to talk about stress? You want to talk about stress? Okay, I've stumbled upon a major fantasy football conspiracy theory. How's that for stress? These fantasy football leagues are being bled like a stuffed pig, and I have the paper trail to prove it. Check this out. Take a look at this. This right here is fantasy sports. You guys want to talk about fantasy football? Because I've been dying to talk to you guys about fantasy football all day. Dalvin Cook. This name keeps coming up on my fantasy rosters all day, and I don't see any touchdowns scored. I don't see anything, so I'm starting to think, is this guy even real? So I check everybody else's fantasy rosters. There's no Dalvin Cook on a single other roster. So I got to dig a little deeper. So I'm thinking, who can I go talk to who's been around football a long time, reputable? There's this Bill Belichick guy pops up from New England. So I march on right down to Bill Belichick's office, and I say, Bill! But guess what? Nobody answers. So I'm thinking, I'm sitting there, and I'm like, is Bill even real? So I knock again, Bill! No answer. So I go into that office, and guess what? Nothing. No sign of Bill Belichick. So I'm starting to think that half of these guys are made up, and I don't know what to do. So I'm thinking, you guys, if you want to believe what the degenerate gambling life is telling you, you go right ahead. But I'm going to get to the bottom of this conspiracy, because there's something fishy going on here. Now leave me alone.
How much you want to make a bet I can throw a football over the mountains? Yeah, if Coach would have put me in fourth quarter, we'd have been state champions, no doubt. No doubt in my mind.
I hope everyone feels that excitement. It is week 2 of the NFL fantasy football playoffs. Of my 14 teams that made it, 10 of them have advanced to the semifinals. I will keep you updated. Let's jump right into our start and sits at quarterback. First up, going to keep rolling with Matthew Stafford against the Saints. The Saints did get after the quarterback last week, but against the Rams, that's a little bit better. I expect Matthew Stafford to have a good game. Then Geno Smith versus the Titans. I expect him to do well. The Titans defense hasn't been what it was since the start of the season. And finally, Justin Fields. All you Bears fans, people that have been hanging on to him, this is your week. This is it. Against the Cardinals, if he's out there, pick up Justin Fields. Next, your sits. We have Sam Howell, Commanders versus the Jets. Say no more with that Jets defense. Next, Jake Browning versus the Steelers. I know he's had a little Cinderella magic, but against that Steelers defense and TJ Watt, I expect him to see some bad men coming after him. And finally, Jared Goff versus the Vikings. It is in Minnesota. Jared Goff tends to turn into a pumpkin on the road. So if you can sit him, I understand there's a million quarterbacks hurt, but if there's better alternatives, sit Jared Goff. Those are your start and sits at quarterback.
These are my starts and sits at running back in Week 16. Start Breece Hall. If you're still in the fantasy playoffs and have Hall on your team, he is a must-start in Week 16 against the Commanders' run defense that is getting absolutely destroyed in recent weeks. Start Chuba Hubbard. He's averaging over 23 carries per game over the last 3 weeks and has a great matchup versus Green Bay, who's giving up 152 rushing yards per game over the last 3 games. Start Derrick Henry. I know it's risky, especially coming off his terrible game last week, but he gets a great matchup against the Seahawks in Week 16 at home. Henry's averaging 18.7 fantasy points per game at home this season, and I like him to bounce back in this spot. Sit Javonte Williams. He has a nightmare matchup versus the Patriots, who are only giving up 51.3 rushing yards per game over their last 3 contests. I would definitely roll with other options this week. Sit James Conner. This call didn't work out for me last week, but he's going up against the Bears, who have the best run defense in the league this season. The Bears give up less than 80 rushing yards per game and only half a rushing touchdown. Sit Devin Singletary. He's coming off a monster game, but this is a tough matchup versus stout Browns run defense. CJ Stroud could also be returning in this game, which could reduce some of his volume as well.
Here are your Week 16 star sits at wide receiver. I am starting Mike Evans. The man has scored a touchdown in all but 4 games this season, and he is essentially a lock for double-digit points against Jacksonville this week. And we're looking a little deeper this week, so keep your eyes on Joshua Palmer and Tyler Boyd. Palmer came back hot. I know a big chunk of his points came on a single play, but if Keenan Allen doesn't go, I think he is a must start. And starting Boyd is completely dependent on Jamar Chase's game time status. He's already averaging over 6 targets a game, and if Chase doesn't get the nod to go, expect that to increase. I'm sitting Zay Flowers and Odell Beckham Jr. They're going up against the 49ers defense, who's been playing great despite losing some key guys in their secondary. And last but not least, stay away from Gabe Davis. I know the Chargers' pass defense is abysmal, but Davis hasn't recorded a single receiving yard in 2 straight games.
At the tight end position, I would be starting David Njoku. He's got back-to-back 20-plus point games. Now that Joe Flacco is under center, there seems to be a connection there with a high floor and high ceiling. I'd fire him up against Houston this week. On the other side, I would be sitting Dalton Schultz with the uncertainty at quarterback. It's too risky of a play. He did get 4 catches for over 50 yards last week, but you're looking for a higher ceiling than that this time of the year. Sit Dalton Schultz, start David Njoku, and thank me next week.
10. 10 ought to do it, don't you think? You think we need one more? You think we need one more? All right, we'll get one more.
What's up, guys? I'm Jake Blastowski with the Degenerate Gambling Life, and these are my best waiver wire pickups for Week 16. At QB, Baker Mayfield is an intriguing option. He's coming off a monster game and has a nice matchup in Week 16. If you're desperate, he's definitely streamable. Joe Flacco is another solid streaming option. The Browns have been throwing the ball a lot, so Flacco will get plenty of opportunities to take deep shots and make big plays versus the Texans in Week 16. Jake Browning is another good option. He's been on fire for the Bengals, and they seem to be peaking at the right time. He gets the Steelers this week, who have been in disarray recently, so he's streamable in Week 16. At running back, Ty Chandler is going to be the best option available. He had a great game versus Cincinnati and isn't a bad option going forward if Alexander Mattison doesn't return in Week 16. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is another decent streaming option next week if Isaiah Pacheco is out. If Pacheco returns, I wouldn't roster CEH. And finally, Justice Hill could be a decent stash. I wouldn't play him unless you're desperate, but it could be worth watching his usage next week to gauge if he's playable going forward. At wide receiver, go get Noah Brown if he's available in your league. The Texans are decimated by injuries. Brown filled in nice for them in Week 15 with 11 targets for 82 yards and a touchdown. Michael Thomas is a player who could return from IR this season. If you need some depth at flex, you could stash him away and hope he returns. And finally, at receiver, Josh Downs is worth picking up in the event that Michael Pittman is out next week. If Pittman clears concussion protocol, leave Downs on your bench. At tight end, Hunter Henry has caught fire in the last 2 weeks and is definitely startable next week versus the Broncos if you are desperate at tight end. This is a poker hand I played at 1-2 stakes at Shuffle 512 in Austin, Texas. Effective stacks were about $320. I limp under the gun with pocket fours, which is a play I don't recommend. You really should never open limp, but I did it in this hand because my table was mostly passive players who weren't raising pre-flop and I wanted to play post-flop with them. 5 other players limp and the big blind raises to 17. I call and all the other limpers call. So we go 7 ways to a flop that comes King 9-4 rainbow. Our suspect pre-flop play is instantly rewarded and we flop a set, and the better news is that the big blind c-bets for a very small sizing of $19. I like to call instead of raise since I'm in position and the pot is already big enough to get stacks in by the river. All of the other players fold and the turn comes the 8 of hearts bringing in a heart draw. The big blind bets $75 and again I just call in position. Hopefully he'll go all in on the river, but if he checks I can go all in myself. And then the river comes the queen of diamonds. The big blind jams all in for $211 effective. I snap call and we win versus king queen for a nice pot.
All right, for all you, let's jump into what we got right and wrong last week. Things we got right. Telling you, start Matthew Stafford. He didn't do as well as Baker Mayfield. I don't think anyone saw that coming, but he did come through for you. Next, Jacob, telling you, pick up Isaiah Likely. He was one of the better options for you out there at tight end. And finally, Kevin, telling you, start Trey McBride. The rest of Arizona didn't do much, but he came through for you in the first week of the fantasy playoffs. And then I got pat myself on back. Most of my defenses I recommended last week would have came through for you. Now, on to a couple of things that we got wrong. Jacob, telling you to start Aaron Jones. As the resident Packer fan, I can tell you I'm probably not starting the Packers running back for the rest of the season. It's just getting worse and worse with that O-line. So Jacob telling you to start Aaron Jones. Next, Kevin telling you to start Kyle Pitts. Nope. Kyle Pitts needs to be deep on your bench or out there in the waiver wire unless you're in Dynasty. So Kevin telling you to start that, but he was right about Trey McBride. Now, on to a couple of hot takes for the week.
It would help you.
Feels like Charizard just took a in my mouth.
First, Packers. This season's done. Let it go. I hope it becomes just a training season for you to get better, evaluate those young players. I want to see some losses so we can hopefully end up with a top 10 pick. There's nothing worse than ending up with a pick outside the top 15 when your team isn't going anywhere this season. We need a top 10 pick. Next, the Cowboys. Not just hating on the Cowboys, but they did what the Cowboys do. They crapped the bed. They had a chance to make a statement against the Bills, and they did not show up. Mike McCarthy just choked. Cowboys, no. It's the 49ers and Ravens this year. And finally, a little bit of NBA for you folks. The Bucks. You guys got to fix that defense if you're going to go anywhere. I get it. You traded your defensive star besides Giannis to the Boston Celtics, but you got to figure it out. Have to figure it out. And finally, Ja Morant is coming back. He's a bad man. I expect him to help get the Grizzlies quickly back into playoff contention.
Welcome to Miller Time. It's all yours and it's all mine. Bring your thirsty self right here. You've got the time, we've got the beer for what you have in mind. Oh, welcome to Miller Time. Yours and mine.
What's up, everyone? You know what time it is. It's that time, alright. It's Miller time. And it's week 16. Congratulations to everyone that won their matchup and is now in the Final Four. If you didn't, that's alright. Keep your head up. Be a good sport. Don't be angry. Don't be upset. Just learn from your mistakes. Take away the season. And there's always next year. But for those of us that are still alive, it's time to lock it in. One more win and we're in the finals and to secure a big payday in our leagues. My pointers for this week are: keep playing the waiver wire. There are guys out there that can help you win a championship. Jacob is going to cover those with you in today's video. Also, don't worry about your opponent's lineup. Don't try to correlate with their quarterback to your receiver or vice versa. Just play your best players, the ones that give you a best chance to win. Too many times in the past, I've tried to correlate with my opponent's lineup and it doesn't always work out in your favor. And finally, this one might not seem important, but it is. Make sure you're starting the best defense and kicker that you possibly can. So, like my first point, look to that waiver wire and see if there's an upgrade. Every point matters right now. I got knocked out of multiple leagues by 1 and 2 points this past week. So make sure you're maximizing your lineup and not being lazy this time of the year. Those are my pointers. Let's get it done. Let's get the W, and I'll see you next week in the championship.
Because I'm a stud. I'm ballsy. I don't take no from anyone. I smoke my stogie anywhere I want. I don't have to find a hideout place like you.
I didn't think I'd ever need to tell you this, but I would be a bad parent if I didn't. Soccer was invented by European ladies to keep them busy while their husbands did the cooking.
Why do you have to hate what you don't understand?
I don't hate you, Bobby.
I meant soccer.
Oh, yeah, I hate soccer, yes.
Welcome back to the Degenerate Gambling Life's Added Minutes. As always, I'm Jordan Tennis. Just a quick mention before we get into the UEFA Champions League draw. Harry Kane is absolutely on fire in the Bundesliga. With 2 goals against Stuttgart over the weekend, he brings his tally up to 20 goals in 14 games in this season's edition of the Bundesliga. He becomes the 3rd player in league history to reach 20 goals before the halfway mark, joining Robert Lewandowski and Gerd Müller. And we are down to the final 16 teams in the UEFA Champions League, and although it doesn't kick back off until February 13th, the fixtures have been drawn for the first knockout rounds. And we have winners of Group A and 6-time champions of the competition, Bayern Munich, take on Group E runner-up Lazio out of Italy. And Arsenal, who won Group B, will begin their quest for their first title when they face off against FC Porto, who came in second in Group H and who have won the competition twice, most recently with Jose Mourinho in 2004. Group C winners and 14-time champions. 14-time champions. Man, I hate these guys, but 14-time champions, Real Madrid, will face Group G runner-ups RB Leipzig. And Real Sociedad, who won Group D, drew Paris Saint-Germain, who took second in Group F, which was considered the group of death. PSG are also in search of their elusive first title, which was one of the main goals when new ownership took control of the club in 2011. We'll see if they are able to finally achieve that. Group E leaders Atletico Madrid are in search of their first trophy in this competition, and they will go up against 3-time winners Inter Milan, who took second in Group D. Group F winners Borussia Dortmund already have one Champions League trophy under their belt. They'll take on PSV Eindhoven from Group B. And last season's winners and this season's Group G winners, Manchester City, look to go back-to-back in this competition as they start the knockout rounds against Group A runner-up FC Copenhagen. I know it's kind of a layup for them, but FC Copenhagen did a great job, advanced from their group, and it is what it is. And last but not least, we have Group H winners and 5-time competition winners, Barcelona. They begin their knockout stages against Napoli out of Group C. We're going to highlight each one of these matches before the competition boots back up in February, so keep an eye out for those previews. And I hope you guys have a safe and fun holidays. We'll be back next week. Have a good one.
Okay, everyone, what you've been waiting for, the defenses to stream to help you advance into the fantasy playoffs. A lot of these are defenses I couldn't believe that were out there, but look to pick them up. First up, Buffalo Bills versus the Chargers. I think people dropped them because they're playing the Cowboys. That was short-sighted. If you can, pick up the Buffalo Bills versus the terrible Chargers. Next, the Denver Broncos versus the New England Patriots. If you look at the Broncos D, especially over the last 8 weeks, they've been in the top half, and against the Patriots that have been terrible, I think that is definitely a sneaky defense to pick up. Then the Chiefs versus the Raiders. I was right. The Chiefs got right, and against the Raiders, I expected to continue. And finally, the Eagles versus the Giants. Same thing. I saw that they got dropped last week because they're playing the Cowboys, and a few people didn't like them with the Seahawks. So if they're sneaking out there, definitely pick up the Eagles versus the Giants. Those are your defenses to stream to hopefully get you to that championship. Next, little fantasy basketball. I want to talk Ja Morant. Memphis Grizzlies. All right, he's coming back this week finally from his suspension. In case you forgot, the numbers he put up last season was 27 points, 2 3-pointers made a game, 6 rebounds, 9 assists, 1 steal, and 0.3 blocks a game. He is a top 10 player in the league. So if he starts off a little rough, or if someone made the mistake of dropping him, scoop him up or trade for him, he's coming back, and that's someone you want to try to get on the cheap. Next, Dante Exum. I tried avoiding him for the last couple of weeks. He's been going up and up and up because I didn't know how I felt about him, but I can't avoid him anymore. He's been player number 27 for the last 3 weeks. I forget he was a 5th overall pick. He went to Europe. He must have figured out some stuff because he's coming through. He gives you 19 points, 3 3-pointers made a game, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, 1 steal, and a half a block a game. Those sound like John Morant numbers. So if he keeps rolling like that, man, pick up Dante Exum while you can. He's available in 65% of the leagues. And now on to our closing, which is, please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't yet. We will be in Las Vegas for the week of the Super Bowl. We'll be there February 8th through 12th. We have a meetup game February 8th at Mandolin Bay at 6 p.m. Come say hi to us. We'll have some merch. We'll definitely talk different games that are going on, whether it's the Super Bowl, basketball, hockey, whatever you want. Fantasy baseball will be coming up to draft, so come say hi to us. And we look to have a great time with you guys in Las Vegas. Till next week, hope you guys have a great holiday.